Ladies and gentlemen,
You're watching Niche Nonsense.
This shirt was in the actual Olympics. Every now and then I think the universe gets a little bored, hits random article on Wikipedia and combines the first three things it finds. In 1992, that was the Grateful Dead, Lithuania, and Olympic basketball, and it set this story in motion. That was the year of the Dream Team, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. You might know how that song goes. But while the Beatles were playing Shea Stadium, I think we might have missed out on Beethoven busking in the parking lot. So let's take the camera off of them for a moment. As the Americans were belting out the Star-Spangled Banner, covered in gold, something unexpected was unfolding. Out of the locker room and onto the bronze medal podium was the newly reformed nation of Lithuania, dripped in head-to-toe tie-dye straight from the Grateful Dead itself. And as they brushed off the lyrics to a once illegal anthem, a new story took shape. Can a tie-dye shirt hold in it the story of an entire nation? Each swirl a section of an uncharted path taking shape. A place where a country and a culture are given a blank canvas and decide to throw as many colors as they can fit. A chance meeting of hippies and history turned an absurd and silly piece of art into an emblem. To this day, these shirts are a point of pride. They can still be seen in stadium seats in Vilnius and wandering parking lots of Dead shows. I thought this was going to be a goofy one, and don't get me wrong, it still is. But weirdly, in this tie-dye shirt of a skeleton dunking on the ghost of a global superpower, you'll find a moment in time that defies all expectation. This is the story of the Lithuanian basketball team, the year they solidified their independence from the Soviet Union, crossing paths with an American jam band to create the wildest sports shirt in history, and in the process, one of the most wonderfully weird clashes of culture I've ever seen. The Grateful Dead has long had an ally in NBA legend Bill Walton, the sport's unofficial hippie ambassador.
But through all the ups and downs, the redhead's been a deadhead.
For decades, he's negotiated peace between the two states of jam, slowly spreading the gospel of the Grateful Dead throughout the league. Which is why, while you might initially see athletes and acid-tripping artists as opposing forces, they actually have some history. When the story needs it, chance brings them together. And it's how we end up with a dead-loving sports writer, the band's publicist, and members of the Golden State Warriors backstage in Detroit in March 1992. And one of the players accidentally soaking up a contact high that night was a Lithuanian.
Šarūnas Maršalonis.
Maršalonis is where the story comes to life. When he joined the Warriors in 1989, Lithuania was still under Soviet control, and he made history as the first player to cross over into the NBA. A year later, Lithuania was the first Soviet state to declare independence. At the time, he was backstage with Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir. Forget a uniform, his nation didn't even have a constitution. I like to think that 6 minutes into a solo on Sugary, Maršalonis thought to himself half stoned, now these guys know basketball. Either way, the show ended and he set off to test the theory. He asked the band to donate to his fund to send Lithuania to the Olympic qualifiers. And they did. The Dead signed the dotted line and agreed to pay for transportation and design a set of custom tie-dye warm-ups. And with that simple move, the Grateful Dead was now an official sponsor of Lithuanian Olympic basketball. And off the team went, bouncing around Barcelona like a hippie at summer camp. Most of them completely unaware of who the Grateful Dead even were. An interesting side story is that Lithuanians made up the three best players on the 1988 Soviet team that handed the US its first ever Olympic defeat, including Maršalonis himself. That defeat led to a change in the US policy of only allowing amateurs on their team. So, without Lithuania, arguably, there is no dream team. A dream team that would go on to beat them in the semifinals so handedly that one of the Lithuanian players took out their camera mid-game, in uniform, just to start taking photos of Michael Jordan. Imagine getting beat so bad you just start enjoying the ride. Pretty good metaphor for how to go about life, honestly. That defeat led Lithuania to the bronze medal game, and straight into a storyline so sweet it seems like God was auditing a screenwriting course that year. This right here is where the orchestra swells. The coach settles everyone into the locker room for a speech that blurs the line between theater and sport. Smoke billows down the hallway as the team waits for their cue from the synths hiding just out of frame. They emerge from the darkness like spacewalking astronauts about to board a shuttle and look up to the Jumbotron to see their challenger, the unified team, aka what remained of the Soviet Union. Only a year earlier, the Soviets had attacked and killed Lithuanian citizens, proclaiming their independence, and now they are facing off for an Olympic medal. They won. You know that's how it goes. It's the only way it can. Hollywood had to. But as the game ended and the medal ceremony began, the Lithuanians made a choice that surprised everyone, even the screenwriters hiding off frame. Instead of returning in their game jerseys, they emerged out onto the podium in their Grateful Dead tie-dye. And in an instant, this silly little shirt, a skull man slamming home a ball on fire, became an emblem of joy and a symbol of hope. In a moment where a country was still deciding on who they were, this choice became a chance to chart who they might become. Sure, maybe it's just a shirt, but meaning hides in small, absurd places. Sometimes all it takes is a little piece of fabric to help a nation leave a bit of darkness behind them. And when you see that joy can be an act of resistance, you realize that everything around you has that power if you let it. Silliness shifts what we think something has to be. Nothing has to be. Not the way you once lived, not the way you once dressed. Sometimes things exist to be a beacon, to call others in, and together we can create a bright enough light that the way we see the world has no choice but to change. And later, as the team left the podium, the president of this newly reformed nation joined them in the locker room, took off his shirt, put on the tie-dye, and started to dance.